Welcome to another episode from TML Domain. I am Shariar Bellucci. And I want to start off by saying happy December 4th. Happy Friday. I hope you guys are getting ready for Christmas. It's just around the corner. I've been out to the stores a little bit, although I don't really want to, but it's Christmas, so the nieces and nephews need gifts, and a lot of the shelves seem to be empty. So it's nice to see people getting out there and getting ready for the holiday season. I think we need a little bit of happiness in our lives with how dull everything has been since March and everything got shut down due to COVID. So I wish everybody safe and happy, and a holiday filled with family. Safely, of course. In hockey talk, it's been nice. I think the Leafs have had a pretty decent off season. I think, well, pretty decent is not good enough. I think they've had a great off season. They had a great draft. There's a lot of positivity there, and after that draft and free agency, with all the good things that the Leafs did, it was kind of good to trail off into a period of silence in terms of hockey talk, and then just kind of enjoy that the amount of positive information, positive vibes, happiness. The Leafs Nation seemed pretty content to me with what was going on with the draft and free agency. So it was good. It's nice. I haven't really experienced a big, huge wave of positivity like that. It's been sustained. It's been a while. And now that we're in December and hockey talk is starting up again, and the NHL and the NHLPA are working on the details of what next season is going to look like. I don't know if they're going to call it 2021 or 2022 season. They may just call it the 22 season, but it'll be interesting if it starts after January 1st. Is it just the 2022 season? But yeah, they're starting to talk about it. I kind of wish they would have had this figured out like the NBA already. So we would have had the dates. We could start planning. The NHL is not going to start and take the spotlight off of the World Juniors. So we knew, December 24th, 25th wasn't a feasible date. And the NBA starting up in and around that time. So sometime after January 1st makes sense. And I think right now they're looking to push it to somewhere between January 15, 16, 17, 18, something like that. It's more than doable. I mean, the NBA is starting their season towards the end of December, and they're still trying to get. I think they're going to be getting in all 72 games, 72 games out of 82, I believe. And the NHL is looking at a 56 game season, which is interesting. All Canadian division sounds great. There's no way. I don't see any better way to fire up all these Canadian rivalries between Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, and if they play each other a whole bunch of times, I would sign up for McDavid versus Matthews 8 or 10 times instead of the one or two times that we get to see a season. So all Canadian division sounds great to me. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fans chirping each other on Twitter and social media, which is really the heart of hockey in Canada. I think all that shit talking and the back and forth chirping on Twitter, I think it's great. You know, Montreal Canadian fans this season, for whatever reason, have really become emboldened, and they tweet me like crazy. They say, well, our team made the playoffs this year and yours didn't. I go, 500 teams don't make the playoffs. And they say, well, technically we made it. Well, technically you're a 500 team and you were handed something, so I don't know what to tell you, really. But yeah, all Canadian division sounds great. I can't wait for hockey to start up. It's been the most boring September, October, November of my life. Usually hockey is like well underway by now, and you have a good idea of what's going to happen. American Thanksgiving is usually the bar, the period of time where, you know how the standings are going to shake out, and you know who's good and who's not good, and what the playoff teams look like by American Thanksgiving. So it's sad that we don't have that. But let's get started. So, like I was saying, it's been a decent time in Toronto. I've enjoyed this little pause after the period of positivity, draft and offseason the Leafs have had. And then Brian Burke comes out of nowhere with his same old level of stupidity. Like, this guy is made of the same dinosaur that Don Cherry was. And Don Cherry was great. He's a spectacle on Saturday night with his suits and stuff and his rants. But Brian Burke does not get challenged at all. And why is he on TV in Toronto? Why is he living in Toronto? Because he knows that regardless of what his opinion is, he's going to get asked to say it on a daily basis, and he's going to get free reign to say whatever he wants because no one's going to challenge him. Because who's going to challenge him on Sportsnet? Name one personality on Sportsnet that can challenge Brian Burke, and he knows that, and he gets free reign to say all the stupid things. This is the guy who ran the Leafs into the ground. This is the guy who loves toughness but traded 2 firsts and a second for Phil Kessel, who has zero toughness, no back checking, no defense, nothing in his game other than he snipes goals. That's it. But he decided that when he was going to build the Toronto Maple Leafs, he was going to go trade 2 firsts and a second for Phil Kessel as his piece. And then his idea of building defense was to go and get Dion Phaneuf. But this is the guy. This is the guy that doesn't get challenged and he gets to say whatever he wants. So, normally I just let this stuff go by. I mean, Toronto is a place that's full of ridiculous things on television, especially on the sports channels. I mean, TSN, for the longest time, drove the point home that there was going to be an unprecedented RFA offseason. And guess what? All the RFA signed for little to no money. And then Mitch Marner got $11 million. And then Bob McKenzie came out on television and podcasts and said, you know what? Mitch Marner's really an outlier. So they went from unprecedented RFA summer to Mitch Marner's just an outlier. And nobody called out nobody. But I watched this video yesterday and it drove me insane. There's some guys in this town who make a lot of videos and they're very loud and they're very opinionated. Steve Dangle being one of them. But when he talks to Brian Burke, he's quiet and he's a pussycat and he doesn't push back on nothing. So let's watch this video and then we could break it down together.
When you see what the Leafs did this offseason, Brian, Wayne Simmons, Joe Thornton, Zach Bogosian, 3 big names that, and Wayne and Zach are a little bit more on the physical side than I would say Joe Thornton is at this career. What do you think about the changes that they've made, the adjustments that they've made, and what it says about maybe the changing philosophies in the Leafs front office?
Well, first off, I like a lot of the moves they've made. I like Zach Bogosian a lot. He's a big body guy, gives them some grit. I love Wayne Simmons, but I'm taken aback by the sleight of hand here. This is a magician talking, saying we added Wayne Simmons. You didn't. You replaced Kyle Clifford. They didn't get tougher.
So he's saying because in his eyes, Wayne Simmons is just a Kyle Clifford replacement. Adding Bogosian on top of that is not getting tougher. So Zach Bogosian wasn't here last year, but he's here now, and he's a tough guy. But that's not adding toughness. Kyle Clifford was tough. Let's look at Kyle Clifford. Let's look at Kyle Clifford during the 5 games where the Leafs played the Columbus Blue Jackets. Kyle Clifford, game 1, 0 hits in 3 minutes and 21 minutes. 3 minutes and 21 seconds, sorry. Next game, he plays 7:36 and he has 2 hits. He has 1 hit in 10 minutes and 34 seconds. He has 2 hits in 11 minutes and 59 seconds. And then he has 0 hits and he plays 7:35. So Brian Burke is saying that the Leafs did not get tougher by replacing Kyle Clifford with somebody who's usually going to hit more than Kyle Clifford in Wayne Simmons and Zach Bogosian. Kyle Clifford averaged 5 hits in 5 games. That's 1 hit a game, playing 10 minutes or less. Brian Burke is beyond ridiculous. Kyle Clifford, yes, he fights. Wayne Simmons does that too, and so does Zach Bogosian. But to say that you replaced Kyle Clifford and you didn't get any tougher makes 0 sense. Kyle Clifford refused to hit in the playoffs. 5 hits in 5 games is not toughness. Somebody needs to call that man out. He drove the Leafs into the ground single-handedly, and now he's doing the same thing. The media in this town does not get fact-checked at all. Kyle Clifford did nothing. 0 points, 0 goals, 0 assists. You think Wayne Simmons, who has more goals, more assists, more points in his career than Kyle Clifford, hits, fights, does all that stuff, who do you think is the better player? Who would you rather have? It's beyond ridiculous the things this man says as an adult on national television. It's beyond ridiculous. But guys like Steve Dangle, who spend time on social media yelling, being loud, and opinionated, have nothing to say. Because they don't know these stats.
They took one really tough guy out of the lineup and put one back. They didn't add any net toughness. They replaced Kyle Clifford.
That's
And it drives
completely
me nuts when
incorrect.
people say, well, they added Wade Simmons. Really? You took Kyle Clifford out, who I would argue is a tougher player than Wayne Simmons, and then you bring in Wayne Simmons. I love Wayne Simmons. I think Wayne Simmons is going to be a GM in our league someday. I think he's a good guy, good leader, quality addition. I like TJ Brody. Had him in Calgary. Quality guy. Wonderful person. Left shot D, can play the right side.
So
that was a good pickup.
these
They
are
made some positive
the
changes.
nice things you say before you slap someone in the
$40
face.
million tied up in 4 forwards. You cannot have a competitive team if you've got $40 million tied up in.
Another ridiculous take on spending money on forwards. So the Leafs have $40 million tied up in 4 forwards. That is true. Let's also look at some other facts. If you look at Cap Friendly, you can see spending by forwards, defensemen, and goalies. The Leafs are number 1 in forward spending. They have spent $53.2 million. That's correct on forwards. 65.3 of their cap. What I have highlighted is the top 10 spending in forwards. Jets are there. Washington Capitals are there. Buffalo Sabres are there. Colorado, Tampa Bay, Dallas Stars. Of those 10 teams, whose forward core would you take over the Leafs? Buffalo's? Nope. Edmonton? Nope. Philadelphia? Nope. Vancouver? No. Dallas? No. I like Tampa's forward core. I like Colorado's forward core, mostly because they were smart and they took Nazem Kadri from the Leafs. And Washington. There's 3 teams of that 10 that I like more than the Leafs. But look at, so he says $40 million on 4 guys, but look at the total spending. It's not out of proportion compared to the other teams in the NHL. Brian Burke is so full of shit, and I will call him out, and I would love to talk to him in person and be like, if the Leafs spend $53 million on forwards, and they have Zach Hyman and Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews and John Tavares and Nylander and Mikheyev and Kerfoot and Thornton and Wayne Simmons, if you look at that forward core and look at that total, whose forward core would you take out of the top 10? Between the Leafs and the Edmonton Oilers is a $5 million difference. That's one forward. That's one good forward difference. It's beyond ridiculous. The things this old man says, and yet nobody calls them out. Look at them just sitting there. Yeah, oh yeah, it's an issue spending $40 million on 4 guys. Look at the Leafs total. It's not out of whack with the rest of the NHL. I would take the Leafs over most of these teams. Just the forward core. We're not talking about defense or goaltending. Spending on forward core is not out of whack for the Leafs. Between the Leafs and the Winnipeg Jets, there's literally a $40,000 difference. But you can't spend $40 million on 4 guys. Why not? What difference does it make? This is a guy who traded the Leafs' future away and signed Phil Kessel to some massive contract, and then the team failed. Why did you trade for talent? Unbelievable that this man gets to say whatever the hell he wants and nobody calls him out. Leafs Nation on Twitter and on YouTube, you need to go and say, hey Steve, hey Adam, hey Jesse, how about you guys start talking? When this man spews bullshit, how about you just raise your hand and say, it's true that the Leafs spent $40 million on 4 forwards, but their total spending on forwards is not out of whack with the rest of the NHL. That's a fact. You're not making anything up when you say that. It's okay to say that. It's okay to challenge Brian Burke. The guy's not a good GM. It's unbelievable, this level of stupidity and bullshit. He likes to put his finger on $40 million for 4 guys, but guess who he's going to trade out of the $40 million in 4 forwards? The guy making $6.9 million. Unbelievable. Let's continue.
4 forwards. They need to move Nylander and get a defenseman. And I'm not going to come off that position until they do. because right now they're not good enough to win. Like, so I put the teams down on paper, and I put them next to one another.
All right. Contract signings, defensemen, anywhere between $5 and $6.75 million. Let's say you trade Nylander $6.9 million. Name one of these defensemen. You know, the Leafs added TJ Brody at $5 million. Whether it's Torrey Krug or Petrie or Jonas Brodin signed a $6 million contract as the captain. You got Jake Muzzin on there. Name one of these guys that if the Leafs add him, they become a legitimate contender, a Stanley Cup favorite. But yeah, let's trade Nylander because Brian Burke says so. You want to trade Nylander because Brian Burke says so, but guess what? He traded for Phil Kessel and traded away the Leafs' future, which completely screwed the team. And guess what? Now they had to rebuild. Because who needs Dougie Hamilton and Tyler Seguin, right? Brian Burke loves hindsight, which is 2020. He can sit there now and say, yep, you can't spend this much on forwards. Yep, you got to trade Nylander. His issue with Nylander's got to be personal. Whatever happened, I don't know what it is between Brian Burke and Nylander, but it's personal at this point because he's saying I'm not going to come off this stance unless they trade him. He's telling Dubas that I'm not going to change my mind or I'm not going to come off this and I'm going to keep talking about it until you trade him. Who are you? You're nobody. You're sitting on TV at Sportsnet who fired Kyprios and McLean and all these other guys who made up nonsense. Kyprios, Nylander's going to get $8.5 million. Yep, that happened. And then Sportsnet goes through a whole huge slew of firings because they're a trash channel. Trash sports. I literally never turn on Sportsnet for anything. Whether it's even sports highlights, whether it's any type of radio show, Sportsnet has nothing. If they don't have the Blue Jays, they would literally be nothing. They would be irrelevant in sports. TSN at least has some compelling people like Button, who does the drafts and all these other things, and then you have Dreger and you have McKenzie, and they have the Overdrive with O-Dog and Noodles, and like they have compelling stuff. Sportsnet literally has nothing but this guy. So yeah, here's a list of defensemen that signed from anywhere between $5 million and $6.75. Name one of these defensemen you would add and make the Leafs a legitimate Stanley Cup contender right now. If we trade Nylander. Name one guy off this list. Two of them are Leafs already. And it hasn't moved the needle at all. Exactly, Brian Burke. Let's just trade Nylander. Let's just trade him.
This is how
These guys are completely quiet, saying nothing.
The Boston Bruins right now, I don't think so. So I say, okay, that's one team that they can't beat, in my opinion. But I don't. So I say, okay, are the Leafs as good as the Boston Bruins right now? I don't think so. So I say, okay.
The Boston Bruins, who are without Torrey Krug, who could be without Zdeno Chara and Tuukka Rask, take out those three players, yes, the Leafs are better than Boston Bruins. Boston Bruins are not going to run this division with Halak in net and some backup goaltender no one's ever heard about.
Okay, that's one team that they can't beat, in my opinion. But they're closer than they were. Can they beat Tampa? Nope. Can they beat Washington? Nope, not for me. And that's how I do it. And so to me, do I think they're a playoff team? Yes. I like watching them play. They're fun to watch play. Sheldon Keefe's a good coach. Like, they've got match.
Hey, Brian Burke, why are the Leafs fun to watch? Is it because of the four forwards making $40 million?
Up front. but they're not built for playoff success. And it's not just Brian Burke teams. Look at the Final Four this year, the Frozen Four. Look at the finals. There were 100 hits in 2 of the games in the finals. Over 100 hits. This team is not built to sustain.
There was 100 hits. If Kyle Clifford was there, he would have thrown maybe one of them because he averages 1 check a game. But Brian Burke says you need Kyle
that
Clifford.
kind of grind. And so I think they're going to have trouble. But do I like the moves?
I like how he says the Leafs can handle the grind, but he has a frame behind him of 2 of the softest players in the history of the game, the Sedins. I think that's kind of ironic.
They made this year, yes. They've gotten better.
Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
Sorry, I can already see the comment section, and people's brains are currently melting out of their ears right now at the mention of trading William Nylander. If it is a money issue, and I mean, I see it too. I think it'd be stupid not to.
It's not a money issue when you know how to handle the cap. Like, all you heard this offseason before free agency and the draft, all these different people chirping me on Twitter saying, the Leafs can't do anything. They got no cap space. Well, guess what? They didn't trade any of their core guys, which is Anderson, Riley, Marner, Matthews, Tavares, Nylander. They didn't trade any of their core. They traded 2 fringe guys. They kept Kerfoot. And then they added TJ Brody, Joe Thornton, Wayne Simmons. They added Jimmy Vesey. They re-signed Spezza. And they had a great draft. It's not a money issue. The Leafs still have, they have space under the cap. They can have a 21-man roster. With the amount of depth that they have right now, they have Joey Anderson, that's probably going to be playing in the AHL or some sort of a taxi squad. They have Barabanov coming over. They have Mikko Lehtinen coming over from Europe. Korshkov, I think, is going to stay in Europe, but he could come over and help. I think there's tons of depth there. On defense, you have Dermott, you have Sandin, you have Liljegren. You don't have to go to Martin Marincin in any sort of emergency situation. Thank God for that. The Leafs have added depth, and they've significantly changed their bottom 6. But people keep referring to this money issue, this cap problem.
If it is a money issue and you are able to trade Nylander, you'll still have $33 million tied up in 3 guys. Would trading Nylander even alleviate the issue, or do you need to, in your opinion, get rid of one of the $11 million guys?
Well, I think they've got full no trade, no moves, and I don't think anyone would take that kind of money. The only contract that's movable of those 3, for me, would be, if I were another GM, would be Austin Matthews. Like, the guy's a legitimate superstar.
That's true.
When they signed John Tavares, and again, and Steve, you know this, I hate people who change the narrative as they go along. I call things out in real time, and I stay with that position. I supported signing John Tavares, but I pointed out at the time, I love him as a player, I love him as a leader, but I said this contract is not going to age well, and it's going to cause cap problems. Now they're going to have to.
Leafs don't have cap problems.
More,
teams like Edmonton have cap
Marner
problems.
more, and they did, and it's created this. It was the first. It's like a snake trying to eat a pig that's too big, right? You can't swallow.
New York Islanders, Tampa Bay Lightning, they have cap problems. You have to trade away talent to get underneath.
Readily movable that you want to move would be Nylander. I don't care about the comments section. I think
I figured that.
Nylander had a good year last year. He's a good player. I have no problem with him. His dad played for me. It's not a personal thing. It doesn't compute. Like, that's the one contract, and now he's cash under cap. So he's a $7 million cap hit, but he's only $5 million cash. That's a movable contract. So to me, that's the guy that should move, and they do need a defenseman for sure. TJ Brody's a good addition, but they still need a D. And I think their goaltending is good enough. I'm one of the few that really supports Freddie. I think he's good enough. But they're not. Just put their
Freddie
team.
is a good
forget you
goaltender.
cheer for the Leafs. Put their team on paper and put it next to Boston, next to Tampa, next to Washington, and you'll see that they're not ready. And Montreal.
So the Boston Bruins, he keeps talking about Boston. They have Zdeno Chara. They may not have him this year. Outside of that, they had Torrey Krug and they had Charlie McAvoy. And one of them is not there anymore. Did Boston go out and get Pietrangelo or sign another $7 million defenseman? What did Boston do to become such a great defensive team? They play a defensive structure. Defense is not about the two defensemen on the ice. It's about how the team plays in a structure as a five-man unit. That's how you play defense. And usually the best defensive teams in the NHL, they have a guy like Ryan O'Reilly or Patrice Bergeron, guys who are up for the Selke as good defensive players that exhibit high-end skill. So no, it's not about going out and trading Nylander and getting another defenseman. Getting another defenseman just adds another defenseman. And none of those guys on the list that I showed you are going to make the Leafs into a contender. So let's look up the Boston Bruins here for a sec. Defense. Charlie McAvoy, Matt Gretzlick, Brandon Carlo, John Moore, Connor Clifton, Jeremy Lauzon. This is who the Leafs, Brian Burke says is better defensively than the Leafs. And then the Leafs should go out and add another defenseman. The Leafs have Riley, Brody, Muzzin, Hall, Dermott, Bogosian, Mikko Lehtinen, Sandin, and Liljegren as prospects. But Brian Burke says the Leafs need to go out and get another defenseman to be better than these guys defensively. Is it because they have a better D-core, or is it because they play a better defensive system? Their structure is better. The players buy into the system. They buy into the structure. They play great defensively.
Has passed Toronto, in my mind, in terms of playoff readiness this year.
Ooh, wow.
So I thought we were having Brian Burke on, not Eric Engels.
They're not ready. And Montreal has passed Toronto, in my mind, in terms of playoff readiness this year.
Ooh.
The Montreal Canadiens have passed the Leafs in playoff readiness.
Ooh, wow.
So
They were
I thought
500
we were having
last
Brian Burke
season.
on, not Eric Engels.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. He was saying that too.
So all of a
Jeez,
sudden,
Brian,
the
I was
Montreal
gonna ask you
Canadiens are
about
going to go
that,
from a
'cause, like, who do you
500
think
team
wins the
to
All-Canadian
being
division
better
in
than
the
the
regular
Leafs in
season?
the standings
And then I
to
was gonna
actually
follow
make
that
the
up with
playoffs
who
and not
goes
be
the
handed a
furthest in the
playoff
playoffs?
spot.
Montreal, to me, is going to, the answer to both questions will be Montreal. I think what they've done is, I don't think you'll ever see a $10 million goaltender again. I think in the new world, the split between the backup and the starter is going to be different. But they've got a capable backup. They've got too much money tied up at the goaltending position, but it's just for a year or two. And they can platoon their goalies now. Carey Price can go into
So Montreal, Brian Burke says, they got a lot of money tied up in goaltending, but it's only for a year or two. So Montreal has 18% locked up in goalies. Meanwhile, the average in the NHL, outside of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The Jets on down from 9% to 2%. So on average, you're spending around 7 and change percent on goaltending. They're spending 18%. That is a huge difference in what the NHL is spending on average on goaltending and what the see that you can point that out and be like, that's legitimate. They're spending a lot on goaltending. It's not normal to spend that much on goaltending, right? But the Leafs, who are on par, you can't do it. 4 guys making $4 million, you can't do it. The Leafs are not, spending a huge amount more than anybody else. Like I said, the top 10 is maybe a $5 million difference.
The playoffs rested, and he's an exceptional player. He's a special player, but they've never gotten to see him at his best because he plays too much. Now they don't have to do that. They added Edmondson to their defense core, which was already good.
Montreal's $10 million goaltender is playing too much.
Anderson. I think
they pay him $10 million
really
to play
complete team, and I think they've
50,
gone right past the
55
Toronto
games
Maple
out of
Leafs in terms of
82.
playoff readiness for me.
If you're a GM though, I mean, it was a big stroke for Marc Bergevin when he acquired Josh Anderson for Max Domi. Obviously, it seemed like there wasn't a fit for Max under Claude Julien, so that move you could see coming. But Josh Anderson did have a pretty devastating injury last year and had a goal, and they've signed him to a 7-year contract. As a general manager, in your general manager brain, is that something where you go, I got to take the risk now because now's the time?
Well, I think Josh Anderson, he scored 27 goals 2 years ago. Then he slipped to 1 last year with an injury. To me, I think the 7-year thing is the player really wanted term. And I think you go to your owner and say, look, we're probably going to buy out the last 2 years of that. So here's the annual value of this contract with 2 years bought out. So it's really a 5-year deal. And you factor in another $500,000
Nobody
a year.
sold that contract to their owner.
But to me, it's
2 years bought out.
7-year deal. There's a good chance you're buying out the last year or two of that deal anyway. And that's the way.
But that's how Brian Burke
owner.
thinks.
I don't want to hear about the whining about buyouts in 5 years. 5 years from now, I'm telling you, we're going to buy this guy out, and we're going to have some dead money.
Wow. But you got to go for it. Well, Carey Price is young.
I really like. I think Marc Bergevin's done a really good job. I think the defining moment was that they made the playoffs, and their 2 young centers stepped up. So that Kotkaniemi and Suzuki both said, we can play a regular role as a number 1 and number 2 center, and we're ready now. And I think that was a revelation to everybody, including Marc Bergevin, saying, wow, they are much farther along than we thought. Suzuki's a better player than we thought. Kotkaniemi's a better player than we thought. Good for them.
It was a small sample size of 5 games.
The only winger that scored any goals was Gallagher.
Sidney Crosby was playing with a sports hernia.
And Toffoli. I like what they've done.
One follow-up on the Leafs and their playoff abilities. Have you seen over your career that it's possible to teach the young guys like Matthews and Hyman to play tougher? Have you seen 22-year-olds grow into that role where they can take 100 hits in a playoff game?
It's very rare.
He just said, can you teach a guy to take 100 hits in a playoff game?
Out the tough kids. Like when I was a kid, I'd fight at the drop of a hat, and that was something I didn't grow into that. There are rare exceptions. One guy we've used as an example in our scouting meetings over the years is Blake Wheeler. So Blake Wheeler, his draft year was soft skill. He was a big guy, but he played soft, really highly skilled, really desirable player, but soft skill, not bite. And now he's got bite. So the odd player mixes it in, figures it out, learns how to play with bite. But in general, no. If you got a guy who's soft skill, when he turns pro, he's probably going to be soft skill till the end of his career.
It's no good, man. It's no good to have Brian Burke on there and not challenge him or ask him something meaningful. Hey, when you traded 2 firsts and a second for Phil Kessel and drove the Leafs' future right into the dirt, why is it that William Nylander, who's trending in the right direction to be a perennial 30-goal scorer at $6.9 million, who's a steal on his contract, he's the problem adding another. Did you see the defense core on the Bruins? That not one of those guys screams out Norris Trophy. But they play great defense as a team, as a unit. That's what makes great defensive team. St. Louis is a great defensive team. They have Ryan O'Reilly, who's a Selke nominee. Boston Bruins have Patrice Bergeron, who's a Selke nominee. It's a team thing. Trading Nylander because Brian Burke says so is not going to get you anything. For example, on Cap Friendly, I've traded for Alex Pietrangelo. I added his $8.8 million. This is what I had to remove. As you see on LTIR, I had to remove Nylander and Kerfoot to make room for that $8.8 million to still have the Leafs with some cap space and a 22-man roster or a 21-man roster. Even if you want to eliminate one of these $750,000 players, that gives you around, $1 million in cap space as a 21-man team. And that's what you got to do. You got to eliminate 2 forwards, your third line center, and probably your best right winger. I don't think Marner's the best right winger on the Leafs. But either way, regardless of what you believe, your second right winger or your best right winger and your third line center, you got to remove that to add a defenseman. Guess what the Leafs did last year? They traded Nazem Kadri, who's their third line center, to add a defenseman. How did Tyson Barrie turn out, guys? Adding one guy on defense is not going to change anything. If the Leafs and their coaching staff don't figure out how to play defense as a unit or to add some more structure and not so much always have to rely on scoring off the rush, you can dump it in, you can go retrieve the puck, and you can cycle. I think you're going to see a lot more cycling just because of how the team is set up with Wayne Simmons and Joe Thornton and John Tavares. Those guys like to cycle the puck. Not so much Janssen and Kapanen before, but in general. Brian Burke is very much off base and nobody challenges him. Kyle Clifford, this and that. 5 hits in 5 playoff games. And we all can only remember one. He ran some guy into the boards beside the net, and that's the only one we can remember. Just like Mitch Marner scored 16 goals last year for the whole season, and yet all we can remember is he blocked 1 shot in the playoffs the year before that. Great. Blocking shots doesn't get you $11 million. But that's Brian Burke. When he's GM and making the decisions, he goes and trades for Phil Kessel. But when he's not making the decisions, you can't have William Nylander on your team. You need to add a defenseman. Who did you add on defense when you were GM of the Leafs? Mike Komisarek? Why is anyone listening to Brian Burke right now? He's a failed GM in the biggest market there is in hockey. Man, I was enjoying a significant period of positivity. Draft, free agency, offseason was good. Then it was quiet for a while, and I got to just sit back and relax in the positivity that's going around Toronto right now. But then Brian Burke has to start up hockey with his nonsense again. Listen, if you're going to make a podcast, if you're going to have Brian Burke on, have a backbone, have a spine, ask him real questions, and then call him out on it. Look into the information. Kyle Clifford, he did nothing for the Leafs. look at the Boston Bruins defense. There is no names on there. But that's a better defensive core than the Leafs. Let's look here. Toronto Maple Leafs spend $21 million on defense. 26.2 of their defense Look, guess who spends the least amount on defense? Hey, Brian Burke. Why don't you tell the Boston Bruins to go sign a defenseman? The most ridiculous of ridiculous people. Brian Burke. He says the Boston Bruins are great. Look how much they spend on defense. It's all right there. Just pull it up and say, hey, Brian Burke, how come the Boston Bruins can get away with spending this much on defense and the Leafs have to go add another defenseman to become better? Why don't they just play better structurally? But that's Brian Burke, right? His whole mission in life is to get the Leafs to trade William Nylander. And he said, I'm not going to come off my stance until Dubas does it. But it's not personal. He said, it's not personal. I don't have anything against William Nylander. I just won't come off my stance until Kyle Dubas trades William Nylander. But it's not personal. Anyways, enjoy your Friday. Enjoy your holidays. If I don't make another video before then, things are getting very hectic. But I will be creating another channel to do some gaming stuff. I got the new Xbox and I got a racing simulation. I'm going to put it all together and make some videos. Check me out on that channel. It's Persian Poppy. Yeah, enjoy your weekend, enjoy your holidays, and hopefully we can all be watching hockey and talking about real hockey games real soon. Okay, stay safe, guys. Thanks.